a lady gets released from a long prison sentence after ending her husband's life. With her release, something sinister happened. This makes her look suspicious to the townspeople, who are persistent in their pursuit of justice. A man digs frantically into the earth with his hands. He hears disturbing shrieks and covers his ears. But it does not help, and he quickly collapses. The next scene has a lady getting out of her car and approaching two guys. She tells one of them that he needs to start helping himself. Then she wants him to come with her, and he does. The other guy gets angry and pushes the lady down. He gets on top of her, but the other one tries to take him off. The lady, Kathy, pepper sprays him, which sets him back. Later, the troublemaker gets taken by another authority. Kathy collects her person and they get into her car. In a building, a man tends to her wound. While he does, another lady enters and doesn't want a certain file. Kathy takes it off her hands. As she looks through the file, we see she is a probation officer. She sees the picture of the lady she will be working with. Her coworker informs her the lady destroyed her husband with an axe, but before she did, her husband beat her severely and set her on fire. He tells Kathy it was a miracle she survived. He also says her husband caught her with another man and hanged him somewhere. Their discovery of his body allowed them to find everything else. Afterward, Kathy arrives at the residence of the lady she is supposed to supervise, Mary Laidlaw. She has to climb a locked fence before coming to the house. Once she does, she knocks on Mary's door, but Mary makes her presence from the side. She welcomes Kathy inside, and Kathy delivers some supplies to her. She lets Mary know that she has to wear a monitoring tag for 6 months. When she starts putting it on, she notices the burn on her leg. Mary tells her she has cold hands, and Kathy instructs her not to take off the tag or leave the property without prior permission. Mary starts talking about her son being taken from her and how she sent him a letter every week. Meanwhile, Kathy writes and ignores her statements. Before she leaves, Mary says it wasn't her husband on the moss. Following that, we see a man coming to a boy he calls Luke. He picks him up and comes to the door with him. Kathy arrives, and Luke greets her without the desire to do so. Kathy comes in, and they talk about Mary for a short time. The man, Jason, starts telling a fake story about her until his wife, Grace, stops him. Then we see two children walking at night in the woods. They hear something and the girl yells they aren't scared. But they are. We see Kathy with Luke. She prepares food for him and they eat. Meanwhile, the girl in the woods is looking for her friend in fear. At night, Kathy searches the internet for information about Mary. That leads her into searching for a person called the Wandering Man. She finds several gruesome images, and Luke surprises her by entering. She has to help him with breathing. We soon see her lying with him in bed while he wears an oxygen mask. Later, Jason gets a call from Kathy, and she informs him the two kids in the woods went missing. So he goes to Mary's house and knocks on her door. She does not answer, but he sees her through the window and lets her know that. When she comes out, he tells her about the kids who disappeared. They were in this area. He enters the house and finds a writing on the wall stating the devil lives there. He also looks outside and finds nothing in both places. Mary offers him a smoke, which he accepts before leaving. On the next day, many people search for the missing kids. A man tells Kathy that Mary's arrival brings with it the disappearance of those children. This looks suspicious. Then they all rush to an area because the search dog found something. However, it just turns out to be two lifeless animals. After that, a lady tells Kathy that Mary was pregnant when she entered prison. Kathy checks her monitoring device and observes that Mary went off her property. Next, we see Grace and Luke raking leaves. Suddenly, the boy vanishes. Grace goes to look for him, seemingly worried, but he surprises her with his presence. Kathy locates Mary and tells her she is breaking the terms of her license. The lady tells her she just wanted to see old places from her life, so Kathy takes her back home. As the search continues, the dog finds a lifeless person. Then we see a short scene with the missing kids crying in the dark. The search group prepares a memorial for them near a tree. Kathy later lights a candle for them once she's alone. She calls Jason, but talks to Luke. What follows is her receiving a message from an unknown source. With it comes an indecent image. This prompts her to come to one of her offenders and tell him that if she gets one more message from him, he is going back to prison. But it is uncertain if he sent that image to her. Afterward, we see Mary preparing something. The two kids sit scared and Mary comes to them. She offers them the substance she prepared and they try it. Later, they sleep. A man appears there with Mary and she tells him the girl goes first. While searching, Kathy finds some holes and calls Jason about them, but he quickly informs her that the children have been found. We see them lying together with petals covering their eyes. The next scene has their parents partaking in their funeral at home. A man comes to them and tries to give his offerings, but the father, Nathan, becomes furious and tells him to leave. The parents and a few others soon leave as well. They come to Mary's house to seek revenge. Upon arrival, however, one of them gets stuck in a bear trap, and the police arrive just seconds later. Jason exits the vehicle and tells Nathan they should leave. Nathan argues for a while and heads back. Mary looks at the situation from her window. Kathy is there to talk to Jason for a while before entering Mary's house and talking to her. She asks her who she thinks took the children, and Mary does not know. She wonders instead why Kathy stays in this town. It is because her son is there. Kathy looks at the assortment of odd items and asks what they are. Mary replies they are things she found. Then Kathy spots a blood stain on a cabinet and tries opening it. While she does, we observe a bizarre part of a creature coming behind her. Subsequently, Kathy wakes up with a headache next to Mary. The lady starts talking to her, but Kathy only gives her a solid insult. Mary says she spent 30 years in her skin, which is burnt. She calls out for someone named Thomas, and he comes out. He puts a chain around Kathy's neck and takes her out. She breaks free and starts running away, but runs into a bear trap that brings her down. They come to her, and Thomas frees her from the trap. Following that, Kathy is brought into the woods. Mary applies some substance to her face, and soon Kathy starts digging into the earth with her hands. When she pulls out a strange creature, she loses consciousness. Later, she sits awake in their home. They undress her and place her in a bathtub that holds hot water, causing her to scream in pain. Mary ties something to her leg. Afterward, she holds the creature Kathy unearthed and pours liquids on it. She follows that by cutting it with a knife. Kathy lies in bed, and Mary climbs on top of her. She starts putting a tube into her mouth. After putting it, she pours a black liquid into it. She also prevents Kathy from spitting it out. After some time, Kathy sees a horrific creature standing before her. As she observes it, we see Mary engaging in strange ritualistic behaviors. The scene shifts to show Kathy in the woods. She is wearing a red dress and is adorned with flowers while holding the baby creature. Soon enough, she awakens from that nightmare. She looks at the wound on her leg and vomits the black material that was placed inside of her. Following that, Kathy leaves the room and puts on her shoes. She cautiously makes her way through the house, searching for an exit. She gets to a door, but much to her chagrin, it is locked. However, she does find her cell phone and starts calling Paul. Instantly after, Mary surprises her with her presence. Kathy hides her phone as it rings. She and Mary converse until Paul finally answers. Mary questions what it is and tries to take the phone away. While they struggle, Kathy knocks down a jar filled with liquid, causing it to break. This prompts Thomas to grab and hold the lady, and Mary yells so loudly that even the birds fly away. After all that, we see Paul talking to Jason. Paul says that Kathy called him, but Jason does not believe him. He shows him aggression and mentions the obnoxious messages he is accused of sending to Kathy. But the man tells him that they are not from him. We see how Thomas panics and attempts to collect the liquid on the floor. His mother tries to comfort him. We then see Kathy sitting tied somewhere. She tries to get free but cannot. In the next scene, Jason goes to a man that tells him where Thomas's room is. Jason enters it and sees a bizarre interior full of writings and pictures on the walls. Meanwhile, Mary takes candle wax and puts it on her baby creature while chanting. Soon we see that she carved Luke's name into it as she lights it. Afterward, Grace and Luke stand before the deceased children's memorial. Grace tells the boy that they're not coming back and are now in heaven. She leaves him alone for a few seconds to collect flowers from her car, and he vanishes when she returns. This time he is gone for real. We see him walking with the bizarre monster. As he gets taken, Kathy continues to struggle in her attempt to escape. She manages to get something to her and sets it under the rope to cut it. At that moment, Jason arrives at Mary's house and sees Bill there. He instructs him to get inside his car. Next, he busts through the door, which makes Mary collect a knife. Jason comes to her with a pointed gun and asks where Kathy is. He follows that by telling her to put her knife down. When she does, Bill appears behind and stabs Jason, causing him to go down. That is when Kathy frees herself and escapes from the window. Injured, Jason walks outside, calling out to Kathy. He hallucinates Grace coming to him. He lets his guard down and relaxes on her. She then becomes Mary, who takes the knife out of him. He asks her where his wife is, and she tells him he left her. What follows is her cutting him. Kathy observes this act and becomes horrified. Bill comes to Mary and starts kissing her, but she says she is not for him before giving him the knife. Following that, Kathy runs through the woods. She observes Luke with the monster, though not clearly. Meanwhile, Grace stands with many people at the memorial. Nathan is one of them. They venture into the woods, ready to attack. That is when Kathy comes behind the monster and strikes him with a hefty stick. That causes the giant mask to come off, and we see the monster is Thomas. She hits him repeatedly until he loses consciousness. After that, she tends to Luke. Kathy's co-worker, Massey, arrives at Mary's house, and the mob of angry people locates Thomas. Grace furiously yells at him, asking where her son is. He tells her that a lady took him without specifying who. The mob takes him away and hangs him. Mary sees this and suffers. Concurrently, Massey sees Bill lying wounded. Mary approaches her son and releases him from the rope, and Kathy carries Luke in the dark until they come home, and she gives him his medicine. The mob comes to Massey, and he tells them that burning Mary's house down will not bring their children back. At their house, Luke discovers the baby creature. Kathy panics and tells him to stay away from it. They start heading for the door in fear, and someone appears behind it. This prompts Kathy to equip herself with a weapon. Though when she opens the door, Paul is there instead of someone hostile. He wanted to see if she was okay. They sit relieved near the front door. At some other time, Kathy and Luke come to Grace. She is with her newborn baby. Kathy holds the baby while Luke sleeps with Grace. She stands there for a while, holding the baby and watching her son sleep. At that moment, a naked Mary stands in the woods, engaged in her ritualistic behavior.